Hey, welcome back to the shop in Toronto. This is James. Just wanted to talk about pinning ferrules today. A little bit of controversy about pinning ferrules. Some people feel that it's just not necessary. And then you look at all the production rod companies that pinned their ferrules all through the 1930s and 40s. And when you think about those rods today, so many of them have loose ferrules, but the ferrules are still attached. And all you have to do is, either reheat the glue or remove them and re-epoxy them. But had those pins not been there, I suspect that a lot of those rods would be scrapped by now. Or you'd have rods around and people scrambling on the internet to look for ferrules to fit them. So at least by having that pin on there, it kept the rod together. The other advantage of having a pin is that if you had a glue failure, and you'd still be able to fish for the rest of the day if you wanted to. You're not out your days fishing. And also there's a real good chance that if the ferrule slipped off halfway during casting, there's a good chance you might shatter the rod because the leverage on that little piece of bamboo, that last quarter inch or half inch, is not very strong. So ferrules are simply insurance. They're simply a way of adding a mechanical lock to the joint. They're not necessary. Ever since I started selling rods, I've put them in because I see how people handle the rods. They're just not as careful as I am. And people that are rough, people that want to twist things, people that are impatient, people that leave their rods in their cars and get hot and stick them together. And, a lot of bad things can happen. So having the pin's not a bad thing, but like I said, it's not necessary. A good tight fit and a good glue joint will hold it together. And it's not any stronger with a pin, I should say. It's strictly a mechanical lock in case of glue failure. You sort of need to have either some sort of drill press. I have a milling machine, you can see there, and you'll see a little wheel on the front of the milling machine, and that's the wheel that I use to turn the chuck up and down. I don't use this because this puts a lot of power and I can bend that teeny tiny drill bit, which I'll show you. So I do use this for my up and down. It gives me great control. And the other nice thing about this setup for me is I have a digital readout, and that digital readout allows me to perfectly center the ferrule. But I'm going to show you a way to do that without having a DRO. It's very simple. So if you have a drill press, that's definitely all you need. The only problem with some drill press chucks is this will not close to zero. It won't close small enough to hold our .039 drill bit. So that's a bit of a drawback, but this is a very small chuck. It does go to zero, so that's no problem. Or if you had an electric drill and you bought one of those little kits that make it into a baby drill press, that would work perfectly fine too. But I would not suggest trying to do this without having some sort of drill press. Don't try and drill them by hand. Just going to move the camera over here. I'm going to do this in a part 1 and part 2. Part 2 will be me actually pinning one. And this is just going to be now, I'm just going to go over the stuff that we use. The pinning is basically done here with this pinning wire. This pinning wire is .039. We're going to drill a little .039 hole, and we're going to snip off a little piece of this, and we're going to use that piece as like a nail and a very small hammer, and we're going to tap it in place. You don't want to use anything too big because you can wreck something. So I'll just see if one of my tiny hammers are here. No, they're not handy. But I do have a teeny tiny hammer that I use to put them in. Maybe it's in here. Sorry for that. I'm still trying to find my way here making these videos. Lots of challenges. When I watch them, there you go. A little brass face and a plastic face, and that's all you need to drill that pin in. So the other thing that's really critical when you drill the pin is that you drill it on the center of the ferrule on the top of a flat. You can't just drill it anywhere because it'll come out crooked and it will look really bad. So you want to drill it at the top of a flat and come out at the bottom. So what I do is, this is called a Machinist V-block. They're very inexpensive. What they do is they'll center it exactly for you, and it'll also hold it in place. So this is an old scrap. If it was a rod for production, I would put a little piece of plastic there just so I don't scratch the cane. But what this does is it holds it in place, and then when you put it on the drill press or whatever, it holds it in place and allows you to center it. So I know this is now perfectly centered in the V, and on my machine I use the DRO to find the center of the block. But all you need to do, I checked with this one here and I measured it as 039, and this is a number 35 drill. This is a set of number drills from 0 to 60. So a number 35 just fits in there perfectly, just a teeny tiny bit of movement. So set this up on your drill press, put this in your drill chuck, and use that to find the center. Then you know you're exactly in center. And then swap out to use this little teeny tiny drill, and you're ready to go. Now these drills were designed to break. That's all they want to do in life. They don't want to do anything but break. So you have to be super careful and allow the spinning of the drill to cut the material. Don't pull down on your drill press handle with a lot of force, just the minimal amount of force. And as you saw on my mill drill, I just simply used that small crank wheel in the front, and that works perfectly. So you need some pinning wire. You need the appropriate size drill. This would be found somewhere in this drill bit as well. I just bought a couple of 039s. Nickel silver pinning wire. I use this to hold it. I find it the perfect tool. So you can either go MacGyver and do something else, or you can buy a Machinist V-block and a little clamp like that. And you want a drill that is exactly the same size as it bottoms out here. Then what you're going to do is put it all in your drilling apparatus, whatever you're going to use. Drill a hole through, knock the pin in so that there's a piece of pin hanging out either end, and then using a file, you're going to, what I do is I snip it down as close as I can, and then I put it in the lathe, I spin it, and I work that nub down to 0. Now almost all the rods that I make have blued ferrules, so I don't like drilling into the blued part. I drill into the tab area, a part that goes underneath the thread. So that's what I do. If you have bright ferrules like this, it's no problem. You can simply drill through, and then when you clean it up on there, it'll barely be noticeable. And in fact, it's okay if it's a little noticeable, because it'll tell the next guy who needs to repair the rod, if ever, to knock that pin out. And then these pins can be knocked out very easily. You just need a punch. So if you're repairing rods and you find there's a pin in it, you just have a simple punch like this, which is slightly smaller diameter than the actual hole, and you can knock the pin right out. It's not glued in. I actually put the pin in after the glue and the ferrule has set. So that's how I do it. So I'm going to make pinning ferrules part 2, and I'm going to basically get a different camera. I'll set it up for a close-in shot, and then we'll drill it all the way through. But like I said in the beginning, it's not a necessary step. I consider it insurance. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it. May save a day's fishing, may potentially save a broken rod. And I look back at all those rods that were made back in the day with pins in them, and those loose ferrules would have long been lost. So I don't see any downside to this, although I would never do it without having either a drill press or some sort of drill apparatus. Don't try to do it by hand. You'll just make a mess of things and probably break your bit off and who knows what else. So I'll see you at part 2 of pinning ferrules for bamboo rods.